Welcome to Multifamily Grit, where we bring in the experts to share their stories of the celebrations and struggles of one of the most important industries in the U.S., multifamily property management. Kerri sat down with Jack Sipes, longtime industry leader and former president of Dominium, one of the nation's largest affordable housing developers and owners. A West Point graduate and former Army officer, Jack brings more than 3 decades of leadership across operations, development, and asset management, helping scale portfolios from thousands to tens of thousands of units. Today, semi-retired and serving as a partner at Dominium, he's focused on giving back, sharing lessons from a lifetime of building teams, scaling organizations, and leading with integrity. Jack's story is one of service, perseverance, and people-first leadership, guided by the philosophy of learn, earn, and serve. He's moved from years of learning and growth to building companies at scale, and now to mentoring the next generation of leaders. From tackling turnover and improving workplace culture to teaching leadership courses that help community managers develop the skills to inspire others. Jack's mission today is simple: help others achieve what they want to achieve through leadership. In this episode, we explore the evolution of multifamily management through Jack's eyes, what AI and centralization are getting right and wrong, how human connection still anchors great property management, and why leadership development may be the industry's most pressing challenge. We'll dive into what he's learned from decades of scaling teams, the balance between perseverance and wisdom, and how he continues to serve by shaping better workplaces and stronger leaders. Before we get started, this episode is sponsored by Fortress, the only core property management operating system built with an emphasis for affordable owners and operators. Fortress revolutionizes affordable management with features focused on automating housing assistance charges and payments to keep ledgers clean and accurate, centralizing file reviews and document storage through Fortress and AWS, and a free in-system smart waitlist to ensure your property stays in compliance. And don't forget, if you like what you hear today, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who'd enjoy this episode. Now let's get into it. Here's Kerri Davis sitting down with Jack Sipes for a conversation about leadership, service, and the power of perseverance in multifamily.
So, Jack, I don't normally do this. Normally, would be the part where I would thank you for being here with me today, which I will do in a second, I promise. But before I do that, I have to be completely honest with you. Even just reading your intro, I've been so excited to talk to you and have this conversation with you today. Your experience, what you've done with your career, and the fact that you started this all off in the Army, which is what I had actually wanted to do with my career, and the fact that you went to West Point, which I'm so jealous of, and that you have such an incredible philosophy around leadership and the success you've generated in multifamily. I'm humbled that you're here with me today. So I want to say that I need to be honest about it. And then
Little
so then I would say,
flattery, you know, it's humbling for me the sort of the flatter thing. So anyway,
I know it's hard to hear all the
yeah, it
accomplishments
is. It is
read
because
back to you. Yeah.
I just all I did was try my best.
Yeah.
I went in and worked hard and tried my best.
Well, it's proven out, that's for sure. So before we dig into all of those things that I'm so excited to talk to you about, would you mind sharing with our listeners how you got your start in the industry?
Well, Kerry, I came in like I think most property management people, which is, I went to West Point, was an Army officer, fought in the first Gulf War, and then got out of the military and joined a property management company. I think that's how most sort of get into it, right? That's the path. No, it's an odd path. It's an odd path, but I think it's an odd path for everybody.
Love it. Yeah,
People just fall into property
they do.
management,
They
sort of.
do.
A lot start off. Heck, I can't tell you how many people said, I started off. I was in college and was leasing apartments on the weekends, to
Yeah.
get a rent discount for extra money, and then I sort of fell into it and I liked it. And then property management also is it's not totally people that sort of grind and really are super determined, but it's a lot of grinders. There's a lot of, and
Yeah.
so I think people get into it and they really feel that that sort of they like the pace and they like the frenetic piece to it. They like that 2 days are identical, and then they like helping people and get things done. So I think there's that sort of once you get into it, you really feel it a little bit. And I didn't think I'd stay there. Really, I went. I was leaving the military and went through a recruiter that specialized in bringing junior officers to corporate America, and interviewed with a number of different companies. And most people that come out go to either kind of a supervisory, manufacturing supervisory job, or like a technical sales job. More tech now than before, but those kind of things. And then I interviewed with those places, and then there was one real estate company, and it was at the time it was Wilson Chanzer, which became SCG Realty Services, which became Archstone. And so I joined Archstone, in this program for we called it they called it the District Manager and Training Program, which they separated, they shorted it as DIMIT, which everyone said dimwit. So I started off as a dimwit with Archstone and with really Wilson Chanzer, and but I learned the business, and it really is effective. And I was successful at it, and sort of worked my way up at it doing that. But it's an interesting start. It's
Yeah.
not ever what I didn't even know apartments was a business. I didn't ever really give two thoughts about it.
Yeah, I know, same. Like, I always joke that, when I, went to, actually my 2nd year of undergrad, I moved into an apartment, and you just don't even think about the world that's happening behind
Right.
living in an apartment. You never so, like, even when I got my start in real estate 13 years ago, and I was like, "Oh, shoot, this is what was going on behind the scenes while I lived there." I had no idea. Yeah. And to your point, we all tend to fall into it because it's not like there is a career path for it, which is astonishing because it's like as big as healthcare. And yet there's, how many career paths are there into healthcare? And there's not any into multifamily, which blows my mind.
There are some good programs though. I'm on the board of the residential real estate program at University of Georgia, and so which you know 10 years ago I don't think existed. So it's these things have come along. North Texas has one. Ball State famously has a property management sort of program. In Virginia Tech, there's probably others, but those were always sort of based. But anyway, I work with Georgia, and they're just outstanding. College kids getting into it, and they're joining the industry straight from college, which that really didn't 20 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually great.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
actually phenomenal to know, in all honesty. We hire like Fortress.
Gail Brown runs it, and she's really good. And Dr. Debbie sort of calls me up one day and says, "I need you to do something." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "I need you to get on this board for Georgia." I'm like, "Okay, Debbie." She goes, "Do you know Debbie?
No, I
Debbie
don't.
Phillips?" Oh man, you should meet Debbie. I should introduce you to Dr. Debbie Phillips. If Debbie asks you to do something, she's really not asking you, and you just do it. You just do it.
I love it. I hope I get to be that stature one day. I would
Yeah.
love to. Love it. Well, that's actually incredible to know. Fortress may very well take advantage of that one day. But that's such an interesting story as to how you got your start in the industry, and coming in, um, just as that like one off, like making that kind of risk, probably a little bit risky because it was different than everything else that you had
Right.
lined up or that most people were doing. But it's definitely served you well. So you've gone from a dimwit to the president of one of the largest property affordable developer, owner operator property management companies in the country, which is pretty incredible.
It is incredible, and when I started there in 2012, and
Yeah.
you know, brought in to head up the management company, to head up the
Yeah.
property management side of things, and we were about 15,000 units, 13,000 owned and managed, and we had a small a portfolio of third party that we had sold it to somebody years earlier and still managed it for them. So but as we started growing, we had a real growth plan. It started in 2015. I got out of the third party business, so because we were really focused on growing what we had. So we went from about 13,000 owned units. We're about 45,000 now. So it's tremendous sort of growth and scale over essentially 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible growth. How like, I'm asking you to, like, go back and remember those days, probably some hard days, but what was the hardest part about growing from 13,000 units to 43,000 units, 45?
Well, it's such a people intensive business to start with, but to be able to scale like that, you've got to have systems and people and systems, and so they're just so both totally interrelated. And I think the quest for really good, hardworking people that fit your values and that can do the job is really the critical piece to that. And
Yeah.
then you the right systems in place, but you got the people that can execute that. And so growth is and so being able to promote people into roles was really critical to our ability to scale and grow like that. And we use that. Growth is a retention tool,
Yep.
because if you can give people the experiences and the training so that they can get promoted, they get more responsibility. They get, but really, the biggest thing they get is they earn more, and so they can take better care of their families. And so
Yeah.
it's a really, it's a powerful retention tool, because it allows people to self-actualize, or to or to take care of really at the base level. They can better take care of their families because they earn more and they have more responsibility, and they're on a path to potentially doing more of that if they're ambitious for that. So the idea that we put people in the right places, but then also identify those that are capable of doing more, and give them
Yeah.
the training to do that, so we can promote them. Promoting within is really powerful, because it's really effective. It's
Yeah.
powerful for those reasons, but it's effective because if we have somebody and we know their work ethic, and we know that they're a good cultural fit, and we know how hard they're going to work, then if we can get them the right skills, and move them along, the two big things, the cultural fit and the work ethic, are already taken care of. We know those.
Yeah.
And so it's a really, it's really, um, it's a powerful tool, but it's also really effective to be able to scale by having people that are promotable, and you can promote them in the right positions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like you catch a little bit of slack, I think, sometimes as a company if you're constantly promoting from within, because it's implied, right, that the person who was promoted didn't have the skills to for that role yet, right? I mean, they
Right.
didn't. Obviously, they were working in a different position. They'd never been in that next position. But I think, over my career and my professional career, I've learned so much that it is so much more important to hire for based on the traits a person has that you cannot change in them, right? So, like, there are so many things about someone that I can't change. I can't change their intelligence. Like, I can't change their drive. Or honestly, like, there's even been so many books written on this. It's really hard to actually even motivate people. People just either are
Right.
motivated or they're not, and they either are motivated by what my company is doing or they aren't. And so,
Part of
like,
what makes me is get them in the right position, so that
yes,
their skills and their sort of desire to want to do the things that you want them
same.
to do, the sort of self-actualization piece is they're doing something that they want to do, and they're doing something that's effective that we want them to do too.
Yep.
So getting people, that's the whole right seat in the right bus thing,
Yes.
the good to great,
Right. Yep.
getting people in the right seat on the right bus will get them in the right seat on the bus.
Yep. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And so, you actually told me a story about how you had at one point Dominium had taken over a huge portfolio and you had a bunch of assistant managers and you actually promoted all of them in place, but it didn't work out.
Yes, when I joined, we had just taken over about a 3,500 unit portfolio, and a lot of the roles that people were in, and it was sort of, I joined in the midst of this, and you know, half or more of the assistant managers that we promoted to manager, we turned around and they didn't get the job done, and so then either they left or we terminated them. And so it was really sad, because you took a person, they got promoted because they did a good job. So you took somebody who
Yeah.
was doing a good job, doing a good job, and promoted them to a role that they weren't really ready for yet. And so it was a disaster for them, and it was a disaster for us too. So I think you know as because of that, but also I had done this in other places too. I want to promote from within, but you got to give people the skill and training beforehand. So we created a program to identify assistant managers that were doing a good job and had the potential to do more, and sort of looked at the high potential ones, and then had a sort of rigorous process to get in a program where we would give them the skills. So they would shadow other managers, and they do month ends and variance letters and other things to learn how to be a manager before we promote them into those roles. And the effectiveness of that was obviously more. But it's
Yeah.
also those same people then were capable of they sort of saw how it worked, and if I learn how to do the job and then I do a good job in it, and if I ambitious, I can do that again for the next level job up too. And we had that too, where we developed a leadership program where identified high potential community managers that could be regionals, and then gave them that same sort of training at the regional manager level, and we promoted a number of them into it too. So I think at one point, with our RM, I think somewhere around 75% of our RMs and DPs were promotions. And
That's incredible.
it's backed off a little bit now because we've expanded more and we've hired some from the outside because you also can't be too insular. You can't be too inside looking. You have to get some fresh blood too. But I think at some point, I think we were at 75%, promotions, which was, again, we knew their work ethic and we knew their cultural fit, and so you give them the training to do the job we want and they want to do.
I couldn't agree more. And what I love about that thought process from you is that not only do you clearly believe that, but still to this day, you show up for that. You still lead a community manager training session on a regular basis.
Right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so again, coming back to that, so long time, long past, I said, why we're not doing? How do we develop our community managers so that
Mhm.
they're,
Mhm.
so they're really effective? Let's put our money into this. So the in-person sort of onboarding training is important, and but the last few places I've had, we bring community managers in for a week and give them training. But still, that's sort of functional training, and it's also company policy training. So having some sort of leadership or it's really supervisory at that level, but having some sort of leadership and supervisory training um, doesn't really exist much for community managers. So I put stuff together before the last few years that was mostly either just some WebEx or some sort of online training. But really, it's that in person. I think that it's such a critical skill that I think in person matters. So we picked up about 4 years ago. We picked up Covey's first line leader training. So it's a leadership class that we do with them. And so we give that once a month with the well. First, we had all of the community managers in the whole company go through that training in person, and so we traveled around and doing that, different places, and would have
Oh, wow.
full day, so that we got all the community managers trained. And I mean, it's just good supervisory things that most of them probably picked up and learned, but there's just a bunch of skills and a bunch of tools that you can put in your toolbox that you learn from that. And it's how to delegate and how to do one-to-ones and how to do formal counseling and how to do informal counseling and just a lot of things as a supervisor you need to be good at doing, but you don't really ever get trained at that. So I think that's been really effective for us. And so I still do that. I still once a month will fly into wherever we're doing it and do the be the operations person. Plus, then if anybody has any questions about Dominium, I sort of at 14 years, I guess I'm one of the old timers at this point, and so
Yeah.
so I have a lot of the history and a lot of why do we do things this way kind of things.
Yeah. Oh, I have so many questions about this. Okay. I'm going to ask the quick and dirty one first. What's your favorite part of Covey's first line of leadership training?
Um, the base so the first there are six paradigms, and so there are six pieces to it. And the first one is how to change your paradigm, which is basically saying change how the lens through which you view things. And it basically says there's a normal way, there's a way that most of us look at things, and that is through our experiences and other things. But then there's but that's a sort of an individual way to look at it. And so it's changing your paradigm to look at everything as a leader. So the lens through which I'm going to look at things is the leadership lens, and it's different than what I do individually or what maybe I've done historically. So I think that's the base of I think there are certain things that are the base of a concept, and then you go off of that. And for me, that's the biggest one in the Covey leadership is the change your paradigm, change the way you view things. It changes everything. So then it comes
Yeah.
into this loop of how I see it affects how I act. How I act affects the results. Those results affect how I see it. So it's kind of a virtuous circle then.
Oh, love that so much. And I appreciate you for sharing that. I am a huge Covey fan. One of my favorite philosophies of his is the quadrants. So like where you're spending your time and how important it is to stay in that quadrant 4 and not the others. So be working on the things that are extremely important but not urgent. And how hard it is to get our time there because it's so easy to fall into the other buckets.
Right.
So a huge
That
Covey
was the
fan.
base of, they used to do this, the time management, and it was what was the name of the sort of, they sold you the paper thing too, and it was, you moved, but it was basically calendar management. But that
Yeah.
time management course I used to teach, that was fantastic. I did
Yeah.
that in 90, and then I did it again in like 94, 95, and now they've sort of morphed into other things. But I always look for that. I think every new supervisor should take that. It's a fantastic way to look at things. It's, you see all kinds of different, videos and things about it. It's, what rocks you're going to put in first. You put the big rocks
Yeah.
in, and the small rocks
Yep.
fill it in. He fills it in. But
Teach
but but it's
pebbles
really
fast.
true. It really
Yeah.
is true, and it's such an effective sort of teaching method. I really kind of miss that for people.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Well, thank you for answering that question. I still have more questions around this because I'm so intrigued by this. You said when you first started to describe this training, and you said, that um when Dominion first started all of this training, it was really and everyone was coming in, there was training, but it was more like functional training. It was on like Dominium's like policies and those sort of things. So then you really wanted to get into leadership, but you said leadership training, but it's really more supervisory training. What's the difference in your mind? Supervisory versus leadership?
I think it's sort of if you in the MBA courses they teach in sort of supervisory versus general management. General management's kind of executive management, but supervisory training, this is a great one. I think this falls into, I got this list of sort of leadership shorthand, and this is one of them. Um, the supervisor is really the first or second line leader, and they are making sure that people are doing the tasks that need to be done to make everything function right. Leadership is getting it done through others. So a lot of supervisors, though, they're our first line. They are getting it done through others, but they're also really in the little more than the nuts and bolts. And the Army years ago had a I thought a good sort of shorthand for that. They called it "Be No Do," and it was kind of the first line supervisor, first line of leadership. And so that is be the example, and by the way, that is what, and this is another thing I tell everyone in leadership class. Once you're in charge or once you're in the leadership role, everyone is watching you at all times, and what you do sets the example every time. So you have to be the example. And if you don't, it's not the end of the world, but you're also not going to be the leader that you want to be if you tell people one thing but you act differently.
Yeah.
So be no do's, be the example, and it's a really, really, one of those baselines of leadership. No, you have to be knowledgeable about what you're involved in, and it's, on the site staff, if you don't know the different tools, or we don't know, the property management program you're using, or you don't know how to make readies work, or you don't know, then you're not going to be a very good supervisor, and probably not a great leader either. And then finally is do, and that is take action, do things, take action. Don't sit and think about them. Action is almost always better than, you have to have a plan, but plans fall apart, and so action. So I think that be no do, which is kind of the supervisor roadmap, is such a great first line leader. And then leadership at all levels is getting it done through others, getting
Mm.
accomplishing goals through other people, and that is done through clarity. There's a million things to that, but leadership. So the difference is the supervisor is really kind of a little more hands on and getting it done and close to the action, and leadership is getting done through others, not necessarily doing it yourself, not doing it yourself.
So, okay, thank you for that. That's actually a wonderful distinction and super helpful. I could tell that you were very intentional with your words, and so I wanted to dig in. But now I do want to dig in further. So I'm sorry you stopped yourself, but I'm going to ask the question. So, getting it done through others. What do you think are the critical components to that? How does one accomplish that goal?
Well, I mean, there's a bit of the delegation model of that, which is um, you got to be clear about what you want, and got to be, um, I think, you know the why is important. So the sort of mantra that is, be clear about the what and the why, and and then depending on people's experience, they can do the how. But
Yeah.
you got to be very clear about the what and the why. What do you want done and why you want it done. The why is really important. And I get this. I used to get this from people that would talk about the military. Like, well, in the military, you just tell people to do it and they get it done, and that's sort of true, but not really true. But the really bigger picture is, at any given time, someone could, through injury or absence or not be there anymore. So if
Yeah.
everyone else doesn't understand the why, then you can't get things done.
Yeah.
Not kind of like we always knew we were going to beat the Soviets, because the why never got down to anywhere near the level of the people doing the work in the old Soviet hierarchy. And so if the leader was gone for some reason, no one knew what to do, and so no one would do anything. So the
Yeah.
why is really important, because I'm going to expect at some point people to keep doing and keep working and keep working toward an objective, and for them to do that, they need to know why. So
Yeah.
so anyway, the shorthand on that is be clear about the what and the why, and then the how is that's the sort of part that the person gets to work on the plan and do it themselves. And as a leader, if they're really new, or they don't know, or they're new to the organization, or you're not sure about their capabilities, as a leader, you get more involved in the how, get involved in the plan. But the way to not micromanage is to be super clear about the what and the why, and then let them work on the how.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I've read, actually quite a few books about, the lessons that can be learned from military leadership, and there was a book, I would have to go back and find which one it was, that actually gave a provided a lot of examples about how military leadership has learned to be extremely effective. And one of those ways is through, to your exact point, you give the mission and the goal, the end result of the mission that you're trying to
Right.
accomplish and why you're trying to accomplish that mission. And then you let the team come up with the how completely on their own. And then there was a philosophy in that, which is if the team comes back to you with a plan, the how, if they come back to you with that plan and it's like 40% of the way there to your 100%, like you're the leader and you know exactly how it should get done, but they come back with 40%, you send them back to the drawing board and just make them start over. Tell them it's 40%, you send it back. Um, if they come back to you and it's, 60%, you may give them a few pieces of feedback. They don't have to completely start over. Just give them a little bit of feedback and then they come back to you with their plan again. But if it's once it gets to 80%, you just let them run with it because it even though it's not your 100, their 80 will always be more successful than your 100 because it was
Right.
their plan, right? So then, like, when they're actually in the moment, like, executing on the mission and executing on the how, and something goes awry, then they're gonna be like, "Oh, like, let's figure it out, let's fix it." But if you gave them the 100% plan and something goes awry, they're gonna be like, "Ugh, well, I mean, this is all
Right.
his fault." Like,
Yeah. A stupid idea. What a stupid plan that was.
yeah.
But part of it is too that people can't learn. People don't really learn by. We all learn a little bit by watching, but really we learn by doing. And
Yeah.
so, if there's not some room for people to try and make a mistake and learn, now if they keep doing the same mistake over and over again and not learning, that's different. But organizations that beat people up for trying something and not succeeding, and as long as you're you got to give people that chance, or else that's how they learn, and that's how everyone gets better. So that's
Yeah.
good. That's you brought up that. That's really good.
Yeah. So I want to ask because, like I've mentioned, I'm a little jealous. So you've said that West Point provided the world's best. It can provide the world's best leadership education. What does that mean, and what was that experience like for you?
I think. I mean, it's the opinion of West Point of that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody there's telling themselves, "Hey, we're the best leadership institute in the whole world." But as an 18-year-old freshman in college, I was learning how to follow, and then you get into leadership roles and lower level leadership roles, and then second year you learn how to lead at a lower level. The third year you're put in other leadership roles at a little higher level. So finally, when you're senior, you're leading at sort of hundreds of people at a time that you're responsible for things getting done. And
That's
so,
incredible in
it is
college.
hands-on leadership lab. You're from, as a freshman in college, you're learning. Uh, Most of what you're learning is about how to lead.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I mean, it is. There's a history of people that graduate from military academies, and I'll give Air Force that too, and Coast Guard. I'm not so sure about Navy. So, uh,
Oh, Jack, I'm here for it. I love it.
yeah, I have too many good things to say about the Navy. But anyway,
Said
but so it
spoken
is
to our
literally hands-on leadership from the time that you're an 18-year-old freshman in college, when all your friends are out doing way other different things at their schools, and you're there learning how to lead. And you learn to follow the first year, you learn to lead at a lower level, and then every year is just adds on more responsibility, more leadership, more lessons, and more hands-on leadership that you've done to learn how to do it. So by the
Yeah.
time you graduate, people still, I mean, there's still the reputation of a second lieutenant, being a numbskull, but for the most part, you've spent 4 years learning how to lead, when most people have spent 4 years, learning a skill.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and I think that leadership is one of the hardest skills to learn, right? Because it's there's so many like soft skills, and look, whether you buy into like emotional intelligence or not is irrelevant. Like you do really have to learn how to manipulate, maybe is the wrong word. I mean, but I would use the word very
Motivate.
well. No, I would actually like, I wanna use the word manipulate, because hear me out on this. It's technical, right? It's like you would take a Rubik's cube and you would manipulate it to get it to
Right.
whatever you want it to do, right? It's you do the same with people and big teams, especially in a military environment. You have to be able to manipulate the moving parts to accomplish the big goal, right? And sometimes that involves people, that involves weapons, that involves vehicles, like, but you have to be able to, but like and I use it in a technical term, not in like a mental term, like being terrible to people, but like manipulating and working alongside humans and getting them to do things is a lot freaking harder than doing it with a machine or a weapon or whatever. And so like I mean that's such a harder skill to learn. I mean it's the hardest skill to learn.
It is, and there's and it sort of runs parallel to kind of position power. You have an organization, you have position, but then you have sort of informal or leadership power, and that's
Mhm.
clearly a lot more. You go farther with more people with leadership, and that sort of informal and emotional quotient, or
Yeah.
or other soft skills, than you do with just I said do it, so do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. Right? I mean, cuz like that is one way of accomplishing the goal with people, is to say I said do it, so do it. But there's
Tool in
um
the toolbox. There are
yeah.
times, you know just like yelling. I mean,
Yeah.
you shouldn't yell. There's very little reason to yell, but somebody's about to touch a power line, and they think the power's off, and it's not off. If you don't yell them to stop, then so it's a tool in the toolbox.
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. That is absolutely so well said. Um Gosh, I have so many questions about so many of this. So, I want to. I do think it's important to take this back to your time and your experience in multifamily and the things that you focused on outside of just leadership. Because, in your opinion and in mine personally, I think leadership is absolutely one of the most important. But it's definitely not all that you've spent your time focusing on, and it's not all you're thinking about today. I mentioned this in the introduction, and I think it's important to touch on. But you even today are still I mean, you say you're semi-retired, but you've told me you're still working close to 40 hours a week,
Yeah,
which is not what you were working before. So
not
I think
less, of course. In that respect.
there you go. But so you're still actively involved in all the changes that are happening across multifamily right now, two of which we've talked about. And so I want to talk about them. Centralization. So, what sort of role is that playing in Dominium right now? Like, what's your take on that? Where are you seeing it be effective and not so effective? And how are you thinking about it long term?
Centralization, I think, um, in really strong markets where you can provide less service on site, then there are certain aspects of centralization that I think work. I think that if you have a lot of properties in a small geographic area, you can probably centralize some of the maintenance skills, especially on the affordable side. Um, the community runs best if there's someone there making certain that it's running best. And so I think we've struggled with some of those centralization. We looked at in my past I've done centralized carpeting where we bought all the carpet and
Ah, yeah.
centrally warehoused it and then contracted out the labor separately, and the savings sort of got eaten up because one, it was hard to get installers. They were going to places where they were certain to get work all the time rather than, sort of piecemeal through us. But it did the same thing with painting. The issue is we ended up needing all the painters at the same time. And so it's hard to, so we would have these painting crews and we'd say, like, we're going to go around from property to property and do the painting, but everyone sort of needed them around the same time of the month. So, but let me come back to centralization. I think the two things happen. One, we've continued to develop more technology to make it possible so that you can communicate with people much easier. In fact, a lot of our residents now don't really want to talk face to face or on the phone.
Yeah,
They want text or some other method of communicating, and that's not face to face, because that's kind of how they've the last 10 years they've spent their lives on screens, and it sort of works for them. And
yeah,
technology's allowed for that to happen and continues to allow for that to happen. So I think less touch that way. I also think that more. I think AI is allowing us to do that a lot less sort of face to face and individually conversations with people. Can handle some of those conversations can get handled by a bot or by some sort of AI piece. Um, Maintenance, I've tried to centralize that before, and I think it's still there's a place for it, and some companies are doing it really really well. But we found when we didn't have someone on site that the physical asset you know wasn't maintained to the level that we wanted to still be maintained at. And part of that is a little bit, our maintenance people are out walking around, looking around, or driving around, and so they see things, and if they see something broken, they can fix it
yeah,
right away. And I'm a believer in, if you allow something to either not work, like you have an amenity that doesn't work, that's a huge negative for community, because people think that well, if that doesn't work, what else doesn't work? But it's the same thing with something that's broken. If they see graffiti up or a hole in something and it's not fixed, then that sort of becomes standard and people take less care of it. So I think we
yeah,
struggled with getting maintenance in any sort of centralized role. I think for us, compliance is centralized. Um, and so we still have to come a compliance group, but we keep looking at other softwares and other tools that are going to allow us to make that work better.
yeah,
You know it's a it's a little bit archaic from the program, but the tax credit program has really added so many, hundreds of thousands of units over the time, and it's really been
yeah,
a great, it's been a great both housing addition tool and then also affordable tool. But the way that's delegated to the 50 states to manage, you get some weird
oh,
compliance. And so, I'm sure you know quite well at
yeah,
Fortress.
yeah,
Um, and then and that kind of gets us to AI. I think we're in the midst of implementing AI to more what we do, and it's to it's not necessarily to reduce staff as it is to allow staff to be, well, two things. One, to be more responsive to the customer and to do things they really want to do but don't have time to do, and then two, um, our turnover, our employee turnover was, I'd say, pretty manageable before COVID. During the depth of COVID, nobody left anywhere, so it was really low. But then kind of post COVID, our employee turnover has been challenging for us, and I think that people feel overwhelmed. On Our site employees feel overwhelmed at getting everything done that they want to get done or need to get done, and I think there's a little bit too that people haven't been as nice as they were before,
yeah,
or something's there's been some sort of societal shift, and I don't know if that's a natural thing with people used to screens and they're not used to you know face to face interactions, and so therefore they'll say something that where they when you're not face to face, you may say something differently through a program. but it's been challenging on. So our challenges on site with employee retention is it continues to be difficult. I think we're hoping that AI will help in that and not make the job so overwhelming, and to be able to focus on some more of the things that they feel like they can make an impact to, and not just do some sort of rote things, which is
I
what we hope
agree.
to use AI for, is sort of not mundane, but things that can be done that are normally done, in repetition, and don't require a lot of interpretation. We hope to be able to replace AI, those with AI, so that people can do more things on site.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think, for so long, multifamily has really thought that AI was gonna come in and, like, save money, on site, and I just don't think we're seeing that, and I think that a lot of groups have come to the conclusion that that's probably not where the direction we're headed, but hopefully we're headed in the direction of AI allowing our team members to actually accomplish their job, like, to do their
Right.
job, right? To have the time, and then they stay a little bit longer in the
I've seen
industry.
some backlash from that too. Just in if you look at some of the multifamily sort of long term people that have been in the game, Lisa Trojan, and or so I've seen some backlash from that too, where the customer doesn't like it, and the employee doesn't really like it, and so, and the interaction is it's clearly AI. I get
Yeah.
frustrated a lot even with AI. It used to be just with the phone prompts, but then it became the chat sessions, and now it's just AI in
Right.
general. You can tell pretty fast,
Yes.
dealing
Yes.
with talking to a person, or you're working through a program. Frustrated fast when I'm working through the program, because I feel like they're not hearing me, and they're not, as good as it is with interpreting what I've said or what I'm asking for. It still sends me down the wrong path more than it sends me down the right path, and so that's
Yes.
frustrating as a customer. And I think that's got a ways to go yet.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually, such a random situation, but something happened and I had to call my local Kroger, my grocery store, and I was like trying to get through to someone to deal with the situation. And I must have spent like 10 minutes getting through the AI and I was like screaming at
Yes. Dang it.
that was a use case for yelling, I guess. But I was
Like,
so mad. I was just like,
operator.
yes, yes. I
So-
was like, customer success, operator, human. Like, I'm like screaming
yeah.
at the phone. But like, yeah, I have the same experience as you do. Like anytime I get routed through AI, it's always frustrating. Like I have yet to find an experience where I was like, oh, that was a really good customer experience through AI. I haven't had it yet. So then I do agree. I wonder what that's, like how that's
I don't know.
going over.
One of the things I'm looking forward to, like, sometimes, well, the manager didn't send out renewals in time.
Yeah.
So, if you can somehow automate that so that that's 90% done, it doesn't require a human to do it. That's good. Collections, the first couple of sort of contacts with
Yeah.
collections. People don't really enjoy trying to collect money. I mean, it's not it's not usually the first part of anybody's job in the apartments, that they're like, yeah, I love my job. I collect money all day. I try to I try to collect money from people that aren't paying us. So if the first couple of sort of contacts from that, if that could be something automated, and that's effective, then it can reduce the amount of work that we have to do in that area. So there are certain things that you know, in a lot of things in the leasing process. Although again, I think that virtually nobody goes to an apartment without doing a lot of their research online, and they're narrowing down to two or three, but they still want to go tour and see what they are buying before they buy it. And so
Mhm.
I think that if you can um, uh, shorten that sort of time from looking to being able to go look to view it, your online time to view it, and AI is in the middle of that. And I think the best thing it seems to do is, it'll get a human on our side involved with a prospect when it becomes clear that there's more of a potential for sale there. I think that's one of the great hopes is, if you have 10 people looking and five are not serious, then it focuses you on the five that are serious. That's what we're hoping AI can do for us.
Yeah, I think that's that's such a great way to look at it. So, um, Jack, as we're winding the conversation down, I want to ask. because I absolutely loved this when you shared it with me. You shared with me that you are headed into a stage of your life where you've kind of looked back to your life and you've gone through these stages of learn, earn, and serve. What does that mean to you?
So I think it's an old Wall Street thing. It's one of the old investment banks or something. I heard it a long time ago, but it really made a lot of sense to me for what I'm doing. And so I think one, let me just back up and say I think education has been and being a lifetime learner has really been one of the keys to what I'm really happy with my life. I think I'm successful in all things that I want to be successful at, and I think education has been a really really foundational piece of that. And so but before you enter a career you've got to learn, and so that's schooling, and then it's also training and it's certifications and other things. But you learn so that you're in a position in the middle of your career, and it's your first couple jobs where you're I've told my kids, and it's sort of what I did in the army and when I also got out, which is, I put in tremendous amount of time up front trying to figure out to learn the basics of my career so that I could, you know, build on that and go further. So, so those first few years in a career and the first part of any job, you really are in the learning phase, and you're trying to figure out how it works and how business works and how what you're doing fits into the overall big picture and how you add value. And so that sort of those learning years, let you get into a spot where you're in a position where you have a little more influence and you're able to influence people or goals or accomplishments. And so then those are the years where when you're adding a lot more value, you're earning more. So there's years where I'm learning what I'm doing, and then I'm years of earning. And so then and I'm fortunate that I've gotten to the point where I'm in a position where I can give back. And so there's sort of giving back to the industry, and it's also just serving people. I really think that um, we all want to give back. We all want to be individuals, but we also want to help other people.
I agree.
In fact, I was talking to somebody today, and they're like, I just can't get this done, and they don't seem to want to help me. I said, how have you approached it? They're like, I told them I got to get this done. I'm like, did you say, can you help me? Because people go from, sort of roadblocks to advocates when you ask for their help. And
Yeah.
so, and we all, the everybody wants to help in some way. And so I think that sort of, I have it for my example. I'm one of 10 kids. My mother and father, I got unconditional love from them, and I also got example of service to others. They were really involved in our community and our church, and uh and so I grew up seeing that. I was in the military and service to the nation, and
Yeah.
which also becomes service to your team and service to each other. But
Yeah.
all of those things, when so I see where people feel that they're of service to others. They feel better about themselves, and then in turn we all feel better about how we live our lives, and our time on the earth. So anyway, I'm in the position now where I can give back more and serve more, and so I've done a lot of work with industry boards throughout. I've been on a bunch of the lettered companies in the industry boards, and I've done my work sort of serving the industry. And I think I'm at the point where I continue to sort of serve, and so I mentor a lot of people, and I'm looking to probably up that more with doing more work with companies at board levels on things like that.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that you have a ton to give back. So I'd be honored to have you on a Fortress board, that's for sure. So I love it. I mean, I think that's just such a beautiful way of looking at it. And I also think like I just agree with you so much that humans at heart want to give back. We do. Like I think it makes us feel good. And I think providing more of those opportunities for people by saying, like, "Can you help me with this?" Because it gives someone the opportunity to give back, to
Right.
share, to, provide that, and then in turn, I think that starts to, kind of going back to Covey, that starts to actually naturally reshape your lens of how you
Right.
look at how
Right.
you experience life, right? Because if you start to see people as advocates instead of roadblocks, I loved that saying that quote that you just shared. But if you can start to see everyone around you as advocates instead of roadblocks. And I think inherently
Right.
as we, a lot of times as we age, we become more cynical and we start to see people as roadblocks. But if you can invert that, that can reshape your lens and create a much better experience.
And then, I've had people say it before, and they're like, "Well, but I asked them, they were mean to me." Like, does every single thing you do in the world work every time? No. So, it's like, keep going.
Yeah.
That's the sort of determination piece. Don't give up at the first, at the first thing that doesn't work. You don't then keep going.
Yeah.
Wear it out. Make sure that I think there's a lot to your podcast is called Grit, and I think that that determination to get things done is really what sets really successful people apart from people that are okay successful. Not the smartest, not the most connected, and not the best educated, but the determined person is really who succeeds, or at least gets done what they want to get done. Then you have to be clear about what you actually want. But that determination, that sort of stick to it determination is a really critical piece of anybody that you know, hopes to achieve any sort of success. I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, some of the most successful people in the world had so much determination that they were able to accomplish what others said was impossible, right? So like we would have said it was absolutely impossible, but they were so determined that they found a way. So um completely agree. Well, Jack, I'm so excited to lead into my last two questions with you, especially because you said you're a lifetime learner. So I am so excited to ask my final question of you. But I'll start with the first one, which is would you want to share a story from your time in multifamily with us?
There's lots of interesting ones. You know, we see such the good of people. And there's so many examples where residents will bring things into the office, and they'll bring goods and baked goods and other things in, and meals and things. And then we also see the weird stuff, like we had someone who was they were collecting the old thermometers that had mercury in them,
Mm.
and they would break those and then keep the mercury, which is it's very toxic. And so they were doing it in a mason jar, which of course they dropped in the hallway with a concrete floor, and that went everywhere. And so you had the whole fire department and hazmat and shut the floor down and everything. You're like, why?
Oh,
It's like, why?
that's so
These
good.
things I've seen are so good. I'm like, oh, that's so heartening. It's so great to see. And then stuff like that, and you go like, just why? You know, we had a student housing thing too once where it was a brand new building in Austin, Texas. It's, University of Texas student. And the kid comes in at 2 in the morning or something the first week of school. He's got a big chain and he's swinging it around like this. And it's all on camera. So he walks in the front door and he's hitting stuff with these things in. He gets in the elevator. He's still swinging it in the elevator. So it's just breaking everything in the elevator. Gets out on his floor and he walks down the hall and he's swinging it all the way down the floor. And it's just tearing up the wall and everything. You're just like, why, you know? But people are 18 and dumb, but still. Um, yeah, but the best stories for me are always the best things I remember are people that I was able to help them get more for their families, and that's through training and promotion. So heck, Meg
Yeah.
lives with us. Meg was on site when I got here, and Meg's now senior vice president over over our operational group of Dominium. That's
She's
like
brilliant.
she's in
Love
there
her.
some, and it's because of her. It's not because of me. It's because of her. But it's
Yeah.
really, but we gave her some opportunities on some of our programs to get through training and through the path to that, and that those kind of things. I'm like I see people you know. I have some people that work for me over time that are running companies now, or
Yeah.
ones that got promoted from community manager to regional manager, and they're happy being a regional manager, and they're a good regional manager, and they're able to give so much more to their family because they were able to get promoted and earn more for their family. So it really always comes back to people and seeing people that are able to do more for themselves and their family based on any little bit of influence that I had. Those are the really things that I remember the most.
So, uh, I You couldn't have done that better. Seriously, that's probably the best yeah, I'm not flattering you to flatter you. I'm actually not a very flattering I don't flatter people in general, but seriously, that was such a good story because you were able to tell so many stories in one. The Mercury one was hilarious. Um, but I love the way that you said, because I say this to my team all the time. Um, we're very similar in that, which is like, you didn't do it, Meg did. But it is very important to realize and to embrace the fact that Meg was able to do what she did and maybe did it even faster because of the tools that you gave her, right? Like you gave her tools in her toolbox. And when I reached out to Meg, because Meg's been on my podcast as well. So when you and I met, we were talking about Meg.
Right.
And so I reached out to Meg actually after you and I had first chatted, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like Jack's absolutely amazing. I've learned so much from him. He's been such a great mentor." And so like, and I feel like that's the serve part, right? Like we're giving like the tools that we've learned over time to people who hopefully can acquire them even earlier on in their careers and then help them, get to those places of success as quickly or slowly as they want
However
to.
they want to, really.
Yep,
How ambitious. Not everybody has to, be ambitious and want to be the, head of everything.
absolutely. Yep.
But let them be what they want to be, and it's sort of the let's just go back to the army. Be all you can be all that you want to be all that you can be. We all have different skills.
Yep, totally agree. Love that. Okay, so now the question I'm so excited to ask because I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. But as a lifetime learner, what books would you like to recommend? What book or books would you like to recommend to
I
our
won't
listeners?
go on too long, but I read a lot.
I know.
Um, my current read is 1929. It's about the stock market crash and leading up to it. And it's told, in story fashion about a lot of the characters in that, and it's very interesting because it's Andrew Ross Sorkin. It's a good story, but it's also, there's a lot of similarities between then and now. There's a lot of
Yeah.
dissimilar, but so I would say to start off with, this is a book that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, everybody read, and now there's probably a lot of people that have come into the work world and haven't read that yet. So everyone should read Good to Great.
Oh,
It's just a very good base on how companies succeed and how people are influence that.
yep.
And there's also people if people your boss might have read it but you haven't. So when you'll hear people talk about hedgehog concept or the hedgehog and the flywheel
Yep.
and about the discipline and execution, which leads to this one's a little more textbooky, but it's still good. Execution by Larry Bossidy. Larry's a longtime GE person, and Ram Charan is a longtime sort of leadership um, guru from India. Who's I had the pleasure of meeting and spending some time with him in February. So that's really good. And then just a couple other quick ones. Um, I think that trust and honor are the foundation of leadership. So without people trusting you and without you being honorable, you can't really lead people. Not really. If
Yeah.
people are questioning your motive, they're questioning whether what you're saying is true or not, you can't lead them. And so trust and honor the foundation of leadership. This was pretty good. This is a Covey Speed of Trust. I thought that was
Oh,
that's a good sort of lot of he tells a lot of stories. He's a big storyteller, but there's a lot
yeah.
of good things in there about you know do I trust you? Of course you do. You always tell me the truth. Would you trust me to operate on you? Of course not. So you wouldn't trust me to do that. So there's some things in there about trust and about how to hand the handoff and when things fail. But speed of trust, I think, is a pretty good one for people. Um, it's not a natural skill to have difficult conversations, and so
Mm,
this is a good one. So I don't know if anybody's recommend that one for, but difficult conversations. There's a lot of story to it, but there's also some real, if you've got to have a difficult conversation, here are methods to do that. Tools in your
love it.
toolbox. You know,
Love it.
and finally, employee engagement was a bit of um, uh, a word that everybody was using 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 years ago. But still getting people to be engaged and is really important. I think it's probably more important now than ever. I think with our turnover, that engagement piece is really important. And so we worked with a guy named Bob Kelleher, and Bob did. He's got 2 or 3 books, but this is one of them, Louder Than Words. And Bob's a really good engagement. he was an HR person coming up, and then he was an operations and was the CEO or COO of a company. But he's and now he's for a while had his own consulting. So louder than words, but anything by with Bob Kelleher is talking about engagement. Probably you should perk up and listen. He's spent a lifetime studying and he's done some good work on it. So there's my. Hopefully I didn't go too long, but there's my books.
No, that was amazing. I've never had anybody make that many recommendations, and I'm so excited about a couple of them. Um, I have,
A couple you're not.
well, no, it's not that.
Oh,
A
good
couple of
shit.
them I've already read. So I've read Good to Great and The Speed of Trust. And I don't know that I need to read Difficult Conversations just because having difficult conversations is one of my favorite things ever. So I feel like I could probably write a book on it. I would still
Well,
learn some stuff from
when
it,
you're
but
15, it probably wasn't, and when you were 20, it probably wasn't. You've
yeah,
developed,
so true.
you know, you've
So
developed, you've learned how either formally or informally, and you've practiced it a few times, and so now it's like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you are at it.
yep, so true. Okay, but execution is going on my list. That'll probably be. I have one other book on my list. I'm finishing a book right this second that I'm actually going to share with you because
Love
I
to.
feel like I owe it to you because you've shared so many with me, and I'm wondering if you've heard of it before. It's called the Phoenix Project.
Uh, it sounds familiar, but I haven't. I haven't
Okay,
read it, or I don't know of it.
so it's more like it's interestingly focused on, well, so first of all, it's a parable, which is like just so fun because it like, it teaches you all these lessons through a really cool story that could honestly be a movie, but it's
Plus,
just a little
it
different.
makes it easier to read too.
So fun. Yeah. And it's also an awesome listen. I don't know if you ever do audibles, but it's a great listen. I do both because that just helps me like really retain and learn. But it's a wonderful story and it talks about like you said at the very beginning that it's about people and systems. And this book is all about systems. And it
Mhm.
actually, probably from your MBA days, it goes back actually to talking about like how manufacturing has perfected systems and so like and processes. And so it leans into that, but then it applies it to like a different medium. So like actually like IT for companies. But anyway, it's a great read if you're interested. So
I am interested, and I will as soon as we get off the phone here. As soon as we get off our podcast, I'll go order it.
awesome. Well, yes, execution is going to be. I will be adding that to my Audible cart
Because
next.
because
So
let's just say all the great plans and ideas in the world are nothing if you can't
yep,
execute on them. And
love it.
that's one of our Dominion values is execution. And it also is hard. People don't teach you that,
Hmm.
And they teach you pieces of it, but no one teach you, the sort of nuts and bolts of you know delegating, feedback
Yeah,
loops, how to check
yes.
back, when there's a problem, when there's not a problem. So the whole idea of the requirement of execution is sort of assumed, but not really taught
Well,
necessarily.
especially I love that you started that by saying, like, the delegation of it, the feedback loops, because it's one thing to execute personally, right? Like, if I'm an accountant and I'm producing financial statements, I can produce financial statements, like, I can execute, but the higher up you go and then trying to get a whole team to coordinate, a whole company to coordinate executing on something, that's where the challenge comes in, and it is a real challenge, and Fortress has some mighty ambitious goals in 2026, so I'm very interested in that book, so I appreciate that. Well, Jack, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I cannot thank you enough for taking your time to do this today. Although I guess maybe I shouldn't because it's given you the opportunity to serve, which is one of
It
your
really is
goals.
my pleasure,
So yeah,
Carrie, and it's
yeah,
been a delightful conversation. I've watched a number of your podcasts, and have we've looked at Fortress. The switching costs are difficult to get past going from the property management programs,
yeah.
but I think your product is wonderful, and so I've
Thank
known of
you.
you, but I didn't really know you very well, and so this has been a fantastic time with you, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, couldn't agree more, Jack. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Multifamily Grit. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Jack Sipes. His story is such a powerful reminder that great leadership starts with service, purpose, and people. From his days at West Point to his years scaling portfolios at Archstone, CWS, and Dominium, Jack's career reflects what it truly means to learn, earn, and serve. His insights on perseverance, mentorship, and human-centered leadership remind us that while technology and AI may improve efficiency, nothing replaces the power of connection and integrity. We also want to give one more shout out to Fortress, our episode sponsor. Fortress is committed to revolutionizing affordable property management with smarter, more efficient solutions that keep communities thriving. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague who would enjoy Jack's insights on leadership, perseverance, and serving others through multifamily. Until next time, stay gritty, stay passionate, and we'll see you back here soon.